Welcome boys and girls, Costin here with my Khorne unit tier list for Total War Warhammer 3 Immortal Empires. I know it can be a bit silly to do a tier list for Khorne since it's a bunch of guys with pointy sticks and a lot of them are really good at killing stuff. In fact, the vast majority of Khorne units are fairly good in a campaign situation, but some are just better than others and some are just not worth recruiting most of the time. Anyway, starting with Chaos Warriors, your baseline unit that you can recruit from any mortal settlement. And that's one of the downsides of Khorne campaigns. You have a lot of really good units, but unfortunately, you have to decide if a settlement is going to be mortal or demonic. And generally speaking, it's always better to go for mortal settlements, with the exception of a couple of units. So you may want a provincial capital to be mortal and then another one to be demonic. And you kind of only need two provinces really to make them most of Khorne given their global recruitment benefits. But Chaos Warriors, fairly durable, really good at killing a lot of early game stuff. Like when you look at their durability as well as their damage dealing capability, they are an excellent unit early on in a campaign. The reason they're not S tier is because, well, flat out, they do get replaced by better units as you play throughout the campaign. But to be quite honest, you can use these guys throughout the course of your entire campaign and you won't necessarily feel bad about it. Then we have Chaos Warriors of Khorne with Halberds. These guys are S tier. They lose the shield, but they gain damage dealing capability, flank protection capability, as much as that matters for Khorne, given the durability of the overall Khorne army. But if you're dealing with a bunch of enemy cavalry, or you just want more damage dealing capability compared to regular Chaos Warriors, these guys are the unit you want to invest in. And they're ultimately the best anti-large unit on foot that you're going to get in a Khorne campaign, being their durability and their damage dealing capability, as well as their availability in terms of recruitment. Then we have Khorne warriors with dual weapons. Lose the shield, gain 2 axes, really good at dealing with early game chaff, can be used throughout the entire campaign to deal with the vast majority of opponents. Like, it's kind of silly when you think about it, just how many good units Khorne has available so quickly. And then when you combine that with skill lines, research potentially, once you do start going down that path, it's better to go for campaign benefits as Khorne, especially the growth benefit, hero capacity benefits. But once you do start going down the military path, these guys get even stronger. So in a Khorne campaign, you can really just dominate the entire campaign map with just these 3 units. 1 for line holding and 2 for line holding. 1 against ranged units, 1 against cav and fast moving units, and 1 to deal damage. And that's one of the reasons why getting the Champions of Chaos DLC, if you're playing any of the demonic races, any of the demonic legendary lords or Arbol, is really worth it in Warhammer 3. And this applies across the board for all the monogods. Then we have Bloodletters, your basic Bloodletters. I'm going to put them in D tier. Yes, they can do a good amount of damage. Yes, they can win a lot of infantry fights. But here's the downside of Bloodletters: auto-resolve, and the fact that they're demonic units. So whereas Chaos Warriors will rout if they've lost, and most of the time they won't lose, these guys will disintegrate. And that's not ideal in terms of leading an army. It can work with some elite units that are unlikely to die that easily, but for your baseline infantry, it's not great, and their armor situation makes them less useful than Chaos Warriors. Because that's the thing. With Chaos Warriors, you can build an army that can pretty much auto-resolve its way throughout the entire campaign, or the vast majority of it. With Bloodletters, you can't. And one of the downsides of both Skulltaker and Scarbrand is that they both start to demonic settlements. So one of the things you want to do in those campaigns is actually convert those to mortal, partly for heroes, partly to get Chaos Warriors as opposed to Bloodletters. Then we have Exalted Bloodletters, just a better unit. These guys can be useful sometimes if you just want a powerful beat stick, if you want to talk about that. They do gain more durability, they do gain more combat effectiveness, so you can consider them better than regular bloodletters. They definitely are. Of course, you can't just recruit them from every demonic settlement, but um, they can be useful at certain points. In fact, I might even put them down in C tier because you're still going to benefit more from getting Chaos Warriors in a campaign than you're going to benefit from getting Bloodletters. Then we have Marauders of Khorne. So with Marauders, it's worth bearing in mind that these guys were not designed for Khorne, they were designed for Champions of Chaos, for Warriors of Chaos with their Warband upgrade system. For Khorne, they're not bad units, they're just kind of redundant, or very redundant, because if you can recruit these, you can recruit Chaos Warriors, and why would you ever recruit Marauders of Khorne when you can recruit Warriors of Khorne? That is just my perspective on that subject. It's kind of not worth it to get these units. I understand why they're available to Khorne. I mean, they are Khorne units, but they're far more useful for Warriors of Chaos. In fact, they're some of the best Marauders in the game, alongside Nurgle Marauders with great weapons, but all the same, for Khorne, they're not almost never worth recruiting. Then we have Forsaken of Khorne. Kind of also a redundant unit. I mean, yes, technically, you could think that they do more damage than Chaos Warriors, but not against Chaos Warriors with dual weapons. So, Forsaken for other demonic races, like if you look at Siege, for instance, they're quite useful to recruit in those campaigns. Siege, Slaanesh, to some degree Nurgle, given the recruitment situation of Nurgle. But for Khorne, it's not really worth investing in these guys. Again, considering the fact that you do have Chaos Warriors. Then we have Khorne Gores. So this is kind of the thing with Khorne. They have a bunch of these units that end up feeling redundant simply because you do have better options available, or options that are just quite as good. The one benefit of Khorne Gores is their speed, though they obviously, as Gores, don't have the same durability as Chaos Warriors, or they're not quite as good. But still, I do see a value proposition in getting them, unlike, say, Forsaken in a campaign. Bear in mind that all units between S and D can be worth recruiting in a campaign. The lower you go down, the less so. But still, I think sometimes you do want to get Khorne Gores if you want the extra speed that they do provide, but not necessarily a whole bunch of them, really. Then we have Chosen of Khorne, also an A tier unit. They're available at tier 3. They're extremely durable. They can do quite a bit of damage, even though they have a shield, so they don't have the weapon benefit as some other units, but still a fairly effective infantry unit and very, very durable. Your ultimate line holders in a Khorne campaign. Then we have Chosen with dual weapons. So Chosen with dual weapons gain that extra damage dealing capability, of course, by losing the shield, and because they're so damn durable, you could even consider them an S tier unit. Though they're not the best infantry unit that Khorne has, so if not for Wrathmongers, I would definitely consider them an S tier unit, but they're not as good as Wrathmongers. Then we have Skull Reapers. Yes, there's a bunch of units in A tier for Khorne. So Skull Reapers, the way you should consider them is basically Chaos Warriors with dual weapons, losing some of their armor, but gaining more damage dealing capability. That's basically it. They get recruited fairly early on in a campaign. They're quite effective, and if you just want to obliterate an enemy quickly enough in a campaign, they're the unit you might want to get. But really, the star of the show in terms of Khorne infantry units are Wrathmongers. I would say Wrathmongers, and I think testing has shown this, if I'm not mistaken, Wrathmongers are the single best infantry unit in the entire game, really. They're very durable. They do a huge level of damage. They can take out a significant number of units on their own. like, what's there not to like about them? Like, Cast Warriors with Halberds get S tier because they're the best anti-cav unit you have. Wrathmongers just kill everything else. Infantry, and because of the way they're designed, they're not necessarily easy for ranged units to deal with either. So definitely a unit, like, if you want the ultimate beat stick of Khorne, you get Wrathmongers. They're really, really, really good in terms of dealing with pretty much everything in the campaign. Then we have Hounds of Khorne, or Hounds of Khorne. Gonna say that these guys are F tier. Again, it's a benefit for Warriors of Chaos, not so much of a benefit for Khorne, and even for Warriors of Chaos. Hounds are kind of not worth investing into due to the fact that they're just not going to have the same kind of staying power in a campaign as other units. In a Khorne campaign, they're pretty much never worth recruiting ever, really. You do have Flesh Hounds of Khorne. Now, these guys are better fast-moving, early game Hound units available for Khorne. The downside is they're still Hounds. They're still vulnerable. They still can die quickly, and yeah, they do have those kind of problems that Hounds have. I just don't think they're worth really investing in that many. Maybe one or two of them if you really need fast movers, but for the most part, they're going to be very, very situational in the campaign. Same with Cast Furies of Khorne. Uh, Flying capability, more durability than some other Cast Furies. The kind of benefits that you get with Khorne, so Mark of Khorne, if you're looking at that. But all the same, I personally am not a big fan of Furies in general as a unit, though they can be useful if you want a flying unit to bypass the enemy lines and go after their artillery. That's about it. And surprisingly, Cast Furies can hold their own, but to be quite honest, just between the auto-resolve situation that they have, because they do have a poor auto-resolve situation, they're cheap, but most of the time in a Khorne campaign, you're just gonna take your army against pretty much anything. You know, especially if you have a bunch of Chaos Warriors and let alone Wrathmongers, Chosen, etc., and you're gonna dominate them. So either early game or late game, you're not really gonna benefit all that much from Chaos Furies. Then we have Marauder Horsemen of Khorne with throwing axes. I'm going to say that these guys get a spot in C tier. The reasoning here is that with regards to these guys, the one value proposition is if you want to lure a portion of the enemy army to follow you so the rest of your army can kill everything in sight, having a ranged cav unit can be useful. And since you have very limited options in a Khorne campaign, then getting some of these guys can be in some situations useful, but not really all that much. I mean, whereas I would never recruit Bloodletters and very, very rarely recruit Cast Furies and Flesh Hounds, I can see a value proposition in Marauder Horsemen with throwing axes. Then we have Cast Knights of Khorne, one of the better cavalry units in the game, available at tier 3, fairly durable, can do a decent amount of damage, but they do get outshined by Cast Knights of Khorne with lances. Especially if you're playing Arbol, because that gives them devastating flanker. But basically, with Cav, you either have Shock Cavalry or you have staying power cavalry. Regular Cast Knights have the staying power. They're better to just throw into an enemy army and keep them in. But Cast Knights with lances are incredible shock cavalry. When these guys hit an enemy flank, when these guys charge into an enemy, they will definitely feel it, especially with regards to devastating flanker. Then we have Blood Crushers. So Blood Crushers, they're just inferior to Cast Knights with lances and even arguably regular Cast Knights. They, as demonic units, they just don't have the same kind of survivability as mortal units. Like, yes, demonic races do end up being dominated by mortal units. I know it's kind of silly, but all the same, if you can recruit Cast Knights, why would you recruit Blood Crushers in a campaign? The value proposition is not there. I mean, if you have no other option, or if you just want to make a demonic army, sure, they're not too bad, but they're not as good as Cast Knights. I mean, they certainly can hold their own. Again, just Cast Knights do better. Then we have Skull Crushers. I'm actually going to put them in A tier because of the tier requirement, but they're your ultimate cavalry unit. Really good, really high level of damage, high level of survivability. Arguably the best or one of the best cavalry units in the entire game. It's just that tier requirement that drags them down. Actually, it would be nice if we had the warband upgrade system for Khorne, so that way we could upgrade our cast knights into skull crushers, and that would definitely work out for the better in a Khorne campaign. Next up, we do have cast Chariots of Khorne, fairly decent chariot unit that can be easily acquired. In terms of a chariot unit, they do tend to deliver results because there's few entities per unit, but they do get overshadowed by better units. Like, that's the thing, again, that I've mentioned with Khorne. There's a bunch of really good units that do get overshadowed by better units in a campaign. For instance, Gorby's Chariots of Khorne are flat out better if you're looking for a chariot unit in a campaign, though I personally do prefer using Chaos Knights. That's the reason I'm not going to put them higher. But as far as Chariots go, yeah, fairly effective. Not the best Chariots units that Khorne has, because that goes to the Blood Shrine of Khorne. The motorcycle of Khorne, as I like to call it. This thing is a single entity. And yes, it's a demonic unit, but it's damn ridiculous. It heals, it does a lot of damage. And the huge benefit it does have is that since it's a single entity chariot, it can go in, go out, and just keep doing damage. It's incredibly useful to get some of these guys. And in fact, getting a demonic settlement, one of the chief benefits of getting that early on potentially is getting some of these guys, because they're just going to do a lot of damage. There's very few situations where these guys aren't useful. Again, the enemy will not be able to pin them down. Uh, Whereas regular chariots, even with 4 entities in them, can be pinned down. Good luck doing so. It's one of the benefits that Black Coach has for the vampire counts, and it's certainly on display over here for Khorne. Then we have skull cannons. So skull cannons, definitely an S tier unit, without a doubt, on that subject. So skull cannons, the only artillery unit you have, and even for warriors of chaos who have hell cannons, you're still going to benefit immensely from getting skull cannons. It's one of the benefits Valkia has, and Divided Legendary Lords of Warriors of Chaos have compared to the other mono gods, in that these guys, yeah, pretty good artillery unit, pretty survivable, and can just do a whole bunch of damage and have a good amount of sustainability. Then we have Minotaurs of Khorne, A tier unit, very solid in combat, very good. You can put them behind the line. Like, as far as monstrous infantry go, these guys are just great. And readily available in a campaign because of the landmarks or resources that you can get in a Khorne campaign. The way things worked in Omens of Destruction is something that I wish Creative Assembly had replicated, like what they did for ogres and Khorne with exotic animals was really great. Then we have Minotaurs of Khorne with great weapons, which are just honestly ridiculous. Like, one of the problems Khorne has is that they don't have gray weapons, with the exception of Minotaurs, of Khorne with gray weapons. Phenomenal unit, high damage dealing capability, really good at getting the job done. Then we have Spawn of Khorne. Yeah, D tier unit. Like, there's not really much value in getting Spawn of Khorne in a Khorne campaign. Warriors Chaos, different discussion again. Because the warband upgrade system and their various dedication of units. But in a Khorne campaign, considering the stuff you have between infantry, monstrous infantry, all that, it's just almost never worth it to get the spawn of Khorne. And similar to Blood Beasts, like, I'm not quite sure what the value proposition is. I'll just say that they're probably worth it in C tier, because yes, they are better than Flesh Hounds and all that. Maybe that you can use them in a similar role. But I do find Blood Beast to be rather irrelevant most of the time as a unit. It's mostly for fluff. They do have some combat ability, so they're not completely useless. They're not a unit you want to avoid at all costs, but look at the other stuff that you have and just consider the kind of benefits you get from that. Then we have Shrine of Khorne. Yeah, Shrine of Khorne, just almost never worth using. Maybe sometimes if you want the buffs, but we do have to consider the Blood Speaker as a lore choice, and Blood Speakers can be really good at leading an army. So many times I find myself asking, why would I want to recruit this? Not a useless unit you want to avoid at all costs, but yeah, just not really worth investing into. Soul Grinders of Khorne, it's a good question where to put these guys. They are, if not for the tier requirements, I would definitely say they're an S tier unit. But due to the tier requirements in terms of the recruitment as well as the demonic settlement annoyance, like it's better to rush a mortal settlement to high tiers than it is to rush a demonic settlement. So you're gonna get these later on. They're useful, incredibly useful in an army. But you're just going, but by the time you get them, you're just kind of demolishing everything in your path. Then we have Solar Beast. So Solar Beast, big single entity, high tier requirements, except exotic animals. So with exotic animals, you can get these much, much earlier on in a campaign, and that means they are far more readily available and far more useful. Normally, I would not care much for them, but since they are available, if you get those resources, and Khorne of all races, given the way they move around the campaign map, has that benefit of just getting around to various places very quickly, then I would definitely say they're worth picking up. Then we have Bloodthirsters. Yeah, your big single entity flying guy. I'm gonna put Bloodthirsters in B tier. It's quite a shame. They should be much higher on the list. They should be really good, but sadly enough, I find myself disappointed by Bloodthirsters as single entities. These kind of elite, high-level single entities, a lot of the times just don't feel worth the investment to get there. Like Soul Grinders, definitely get worth getting. The flying capability sounds great, but a lot of the times it's not the kind of benefit you really care for, and their combat capability is just not justifiable. But if they were tier 4, yeah, I would rank them higher, but they're not tier 4. And that's basically it with the Khorne unit roster. I'm sure there will be plenty of disagreements. Let me know what you guys think on the subject. Costin signing out.